Hi there, today I want to talk to you about the terrific honorifics we use in Esperanto. What is an honorific? That is a word that denotes status or a title of some kind, like Mr., Mrs., Professor, Doctor, and so on. In English, we have a long and short form of many of those, like Mr. being M-I-S-T-E-R or M-R period. Similarly, in Esperanto, we'll do the same thing, sometimes with a hyphen, sometimes with a period. So I'm going to show you both of those forms as we talk about each one. We start with the family titles. This mostly talks about whether or not you're married or where you are in the marriage situation. So sinjoro, Mr., it becomes S-R-O. Sinjorino, Mrs., becomes S-I-N-O. Gesinjoroj is a one-word version of the phrase Mr. and Mrs. so-and-so, which becomes G-E-S-R-O-J. Gesinjoroj Smith revenos. Mr. and Mrs. Smith will return. Below, we see the unmarried form here. Fraŭlino becomes F-I-N-O, right? So that's a Miss so-and-so or a bachelorette. She estas fraŭlino Maria. Note that while Maria is capitalized, as a name should be, fraŭlino is not. Normally we'd say capital Miss so-and-so, but we don't do that. For most of these titles, we don't capitalize the descriptor, just the name itself. More rarely, you'll find fraŭlo, which means a bachelor, which can be shortened to F-O as well, but generally, if a guy is married or not married, we still use sinjoro up here at the top instead of fraŭlo to describe him. If you're familiar with Sound of Music, though, Fräulein Maria, right, in Austria, Germany, that whole part of Europe there, they use Fräulein to describe someone who's unmarried, would make it pretty easy for you to remember what fraŭlino might mean. Next, we're going to look at some education titles. These aren't talking about what you do for a living, they talk about how much education you have achieved thus far in your life. Starting off, we have doktoro, which means a doctorate holder, someone who has a doctor's degree in something. But that something could be non-medical. It could be a doctorate in law or computer science or something else, right? So it doesn't just mean a medical doctor like it often does in English. Kuracisto is specifically a professional healer. Okay, so you don't want to get those two confused. My Captain Katie books have a recurring character who's I call the doctor or a doctor, and he is a healer who happens to hold a doctorate degree. But for the sake of rhyming and syllable counts and all that, I went with doktoro, which was easier than kuracisto for use there. So they can overlap, but generally you'd want to be more specific and say kuracisto if you're talking about a healer. The other forms of that are doktorino, if you need to specify it's a female doctor. It's not really needed most of the time, especially nowadays. We don't really need to make a point of it being a female, but that would be D-I-N-O, and then D-R-O-J would be doktoroj, okay? I use doktoro Mario, Dr. Mario as an example, because he's not really a doctor, he just works really hard and studies, right? So he isn't really a professional healer. Talking about education degrees, here's another one that has an abbreviated form. Magistro is someone who holds a master's degree, and a shortened form of that would be M-A-G, all right? That would be the short form. Bacalauro means someone who is holding a bachelor's degree. And I haven't found a shortened form of that, to my knowledge. I don't think there is one. So bacalauro is someone with a bachelor's. Abituriento is someone who has a high school degree, a high school graduate. All right? Next, let's look at some job honorifics here. These do have to do with what you do for a living. These are what I like to call professional courtesies because they are a short or curt way of describing what the person does. Profesoro, which means professor, can be shortened to P-R-O-F, period. Every now and then I'll see P-R-O-F -O or -I-N-O as well, but it's much more common to see P-R-O-F, period, as the shortened form of this. Inġeniero means an engineer, and that is shortened to I-N-G with a hat, period. Redaktoro, an editor, becomes R-E-D, period, and that's where we get the phrase NDLR. If you ever see those four letters together, you go, that doesn't look like Esperanto. That's short for Noto del redaktoro, or an editor's note, note from the editor. Below you see sankta means saint, and that's shortened to S-T-A. Use that, especially if you're Catholic or something. La capello de Sancta Helena estas tie. The chapel of Saint Helena is there. Below, I include this one, ELD period, just for clarity's sake. We're talking about saints. I want to be clear that ELD isn't short for elder, like, hello, my name is Elder Price. It is short for eldono, which means addition. And then the two below it, I wanted to say, if we're talking about short forms of things, these two can be easy to mix up and mess up. So EKZ-O or OJ means exemplaro or exemplaroi, is copies of a book or a paper, etc. Whereas EKZ period or EKZ-E means exemple, or for example. All right. Next, we have some Esperanto-related words. So E-to is short for Esperanto. Sometimes you'll also see it as simply E-O without the T there. E-isto is short for an Esperantisto, an Esperanto speaker. Whereas the language is capitalized even in its short form there as capital ETO. When you're using this to describe a person, you don't capitalize Esperantisto. Similarly, you don't capitalize this one either, samideano, which is a more friendly, informal, colloquial way of saying an Esperantist. It literally means a same idea member or a co-idealist, an Esperantist. Mi demandis pri la sano de la samideano. And I use that sentence just to remind you that you don't pronounce these words any differently when you shorten them. It's not mi demandis pri la sano de la sano, it is samideano, whether you put every letter of it in there or not. Whereas here, if you were listing all the writers of this book or the supporters of this event or something like that in a more formal setting, you might say Alexo Miller, Esperantisto ekde 2013. Alex Miller, an Esperantist since 2013. Okay? K-do means kamarado, which means comrade. We should clarify that this does not mean you're talking about a Russian or indicating Russian affiliation. A lot of times in politics, people will use comrade as a barb to say, oh, you're a little too friendly with the Russians there instead of being a good American. All right, comrade Trump or comrade Clinton over there, right? So there's none of that here. No weird ties to Russia when you use kamarad. It simply means someone with whom you have camaraderie or a similar way of thinking. It can mean an Esperantist, but it doesn't have that same meaning necessarily. For example, a fellow thinker up here, a samideano, that only means in terms of Esperanto speaking. Just because you and I might love the same football team, that doesn't make us samideanoi. Okay, that is reserved just for Esperantists, but it could make us comrades or kamaradoi. And I use camaraderie here, and I underline that to remind you how camarado is spelled. Okay, you don't shorten it down, even though in English we usually use comrade, 2 syllables. Well, here it's kamarado. Okay, so you do have to have that middle syllable in there when you translate it. K-io is short for companio. Okay, so if you see Oliver and Company, that'd be Olivero kai companio. And so just because it's so similar to camarados, shortened form, I wanted to include it here. And that's usually capitalized because it's part of a title, Sears, Roebuck and Company or something, whereas camarado usually is not capitalized. And you might be saying, well, there's some other honorific titles that you haven't talked about yet. What do I use for those? Well, if you're anything like Sean Connery, then moŝto, the time you'll use this one. Moŝto means your honor or your highness or your blankship. You can simply use via moŝto by itself, but you can also be more descriptive as well. Via blank moŝto means your blank highness, your blankship, your blankly honor. So via regia moŝto is your royal highness, and that means your kingly highness. Whereas even more specifically, you could say via regina moŝto is your female version of that, your queenly highness. Via regida moŝto would be your princely highness. You could also say via princa moŝto for that. And below, you can get even more creative with it. Via duca moŝto is your dukeship. Lia cardinala moŝto, his cardinalship. Lia grafa moŝto is his countship. Grafo is a count, like from Sesame Street, right? So you can use this to describe a duchess, a baron. You can use this to describe other things, even military terms like a general as well. So there's a lot of different directions you can take moŝto and you can use it in, but that gives you a general idea of how it can be played with. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.